Switching gears, or rather, switching people, the empire from Rome in the western division to Byzantine on the eastern side. Let's go take a look at where that's at.
Well, thank you, saucy daughter. So here then is a look at the Bosporus Strait. It links the Black Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. In 657 BC, the ruler Bias from Greece started a new settlement on the west side of the Bosporus Strait. Thanks to the natural harbor there, Byzantium became an active port city. Here is a glance look at the Black Sea from that port side.
Hello, my peoples, and welcome to chapter 10. Now we're back to the east side of the deal. Okay, so the picture of the Bosporus Strait is, if my camera lady can get there, you got it? We're looking right here. I just wanted you to know kind of where we're looking at. So here's Greece, all right? And so they came from over here and started a settlement right there, and that's what I was showing you guys. I just wanted you to get an actual visual. Okay, so the city of Byzantium was fought over and fought over and fought over and fought over. Okay, so the Persians had it, the Spartans had it, the Macedonians had it, just to name a few. Okay, till 196 BC when Rome came along, and guess what? They sacked it and destroyed it. Okay, and that was done underneath Septimus Severus. Okay, it was also then rebuilt by Constantine the First and became known as the New Rome. Well, that title didn't stay for very long. People decided to call it what? Constantinople in 324 AD. Let's take a look at some of the ruins that are left from the original Constantinople.
Here is what is left of the column of Constantinople, built in 330 AD to commemorate the declaration of Byzantine being the new capital of Rome. Here is a keystone part of one of the structures in the palace there. And here's a picture of the walls built by Emperor Theodosius in order to protect the city from invasion.
Okay, so since we've already really kind of learned about Constantine the First, we're just going to skip to his death. Constantine died in 337 AD, and the United Roman Empire stayed intact like he had wanted for about 50 years more. Kind of. Enter in Emperor Theodosius the First, who permanently divided the empire in half. Remember that? He divided it and gave one side to one son and the other side to the other. Okay, so the Eastern Empire lasted for more than 1,000 years, while the West kind of quickly started falling off the ladder. Okay, Constantine the First was the first great leader of the Byzantine Empire. His rule started in 527 AD, and underneath him was Belisarius, the most famous general that there was during that time. Let's take a look at him and see what he did.
Here is a mosaic depicting Belisarius, who is remembered as one of the greatest military commanders in history. Unlike many celebrated generals, Belisarius valued humility, regularly consulting his staff before making decisions and adhering to his own code of honor, maintaining integrity even under horrific circumstances. He fought through 5 wars, numerous battles, and the Nika riots. Constantine was also known for his code. It had 3 parts: the code, the pandectics or the encyclopedia, also known as the digest, which is what this is a picture of, and the institutes, which were the textbook for the students mainly introducing the code. These together were meant to be the sole source of the law for the land.
Let's take a second to look at some of the Byzantine architecture that was accomplished during Constantine's reign.
The first 4 pictures I have for you are inside of the Hagia Sophia, which means holy wisdom. It was a cathedral built by Constantine's men during his reign. But look at the beautiful artwork inside of this structure. I also have a few pictures of archways that were Byzantine style built in other locations.
Okay, so after Justinian's rule and death, the Byzantine Empire kind of went through the ringer. Justinian spent all his time working so hard to reclaim the western part of Rome just for it to be lost to somebody else underneath his successors. So, not only were the Lombards and the Normans in Italy waging war, but the Avars, the Bulgars, and the Slavs were pouring in on the north. The Persians are in the east, and if that wasn't enough, now there's another militant group on the rise in the Arabian Peninsula, okay, heading to wage war on poor Constantinople. This group had already taken the Middle East, North Africa, Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. Guess who this was? Dun dun dun, none other than the Muslims under the Islamic rule. Okay, so I want to take just a few minutes to brief over what Islam is and when and how it started. Okay, so the word Islam means submission to the will of God. The founder was Muhammad, and he was born in Mecca in 570 AD, which is in Saudi Arabia. According to the Islamic text and tradition, an angel named Gabriel spoke to Muhammad while he meditated in a cave and gave him words from Allah.
The next 23 years of Muhammad's life, he was believed to receive revelation from the angel Gabriel and had them written down by his followers into what is known as the Quran. His followers became known as Muslims, meaning to submit. Muhammad believed that he was a descendant of Abraham's son Ishmael. Because of this, he was greatly persecuted and had to leave Mecca and travel to Medina. There he built his followers into his new religion of Islam, which became a huge community full of power. Muhammad believed that he was the last prophet of the Judeo-Christian tradition and the final say. With 10,000 men, he went back to Mecca and conquered it with its people swearing allegiance to him. By his death, he ruled most of Arabia and was poised for more expansion. The Muslims also believe that he ascended into heaven at night from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
As I had said before, years after the beginning of the Muslim Islamic nation or group, okay, they then started attacking closer to home, which would be Constantinople, okay. The Muslims developed a navy in order to get to Constantinople. They were not satisfied with just defeating and attacking the Byzantine Empire around it. They wanted the golden apple. So instead of me talking through all of it, I thought it would be fun to watch a video and see what Constantine IV did. He was the emperor of Constantinople at the time, what he did and about his secret weapon that he used to defend his capital. Okay, so there's two videos I want you to watch. The first one is Greek fire, the secret weapon that saved an empire. That's linked in your email, okay? And then there's two questions that I want you to answer. Here's your pop quiz. Get your paper and pencil out, and these are what I want you to look for while you're watching that video. Okay, the first thing that I want you to look for and answer for me on your quiz is, why don't we know what makes up Greek fire? They've guessed, but why don't we know for sure? That's the first one. And the second one was, they used the Greek fire mainly in their naval battles, but they figured out two other ways to use the Greek fire. What were they? Those are the two things I want you to look for when you watch the first video, okay? When you're done with that one, then this was just extra because it was just neat to me that they figured this out. The other one I want you to watch is how Greek fire was used to target enemy ships. Somebody actually built, to the best of their ability, the canonized Greek fire, and they demonstrate how it works today. So go ahead and watch that one too, and then come back to me. Land sakes, wasn't that quite an invention? And it lasted them quite some time using it to protect themselves. Well, we're going to skip ahead anyway from 867 to 886 to Basil I and his rule. Okay, he started the Macedonian dynasty. Let's take a look at him and Basil II and see what they're known for.
Here is a picture of Basil. He started driving back the Muslims and taking back the empire territory little by little. Here is a picture of Basil and his son Leo. They did not get along very well, but needless to say, here's a picture of them. And then Basil II conquered even more and fought back the Bulgars in the process, bringing the Byzantine Empire to its greatest height since Justinian.
After Basil's death, Byzantine fell into corruption and laziness and opened the door to, you will never guess, but another invasion. This time, though, it was by the Seljuk Turks, and the battle that they fought was called the Manzikert. Okay, now these warriors came out of Asia, snatching up the Middle East from the Arabs. Along the way, they also accepted the Islamic religion. In August of 1071, they won a major battle over the Byzantines, striking a blow to their military supremacy. And the Byzantine Empire was never to regain that hold again. The Eastern Empire was in some sad shape and needed some help.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, so before the call for help, we've got to understand just something kind of important. All right, so after Rome split, you had Rome on the west side, and then you had Byzantine on the east side, and Constantine I's idea of a united Christian church also started to divide. Okay, so that's kind of important. That started during Leo III's rule during the Muslims' first few tries to attack Constantinople. Okay, but they were, of course, held back by that awesome Greek fire. Anyway, the Byzantine Empire's church gradually became known and developed into the Greek Orthodox Church. Rome developed into the Roman Catholic Church, and we'll talk about that next chapter and later on. But with the Roman Catholic Church and the Bishop of Rome claiming increased authority over all of the Christians, the Eastern churches leaders decided in Byzantine that they were not going to follow that, and they broke off and started their own church, hence the Greek Orthodox Church. Okay, even though both divisions were similar in several ways, they did disagree greatly in their procedures and the doctrine, which permanently split them even till today. Okay, so keeping that in mind and the dislike that they kind of had for each other, back to the Eastern Empire under the major attack of the Muslims, and they decided, the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, decided to go to Rome to ask for help. Emperor Alexis went to Roman Church, and in 1095, Pope Urban II responded by proclaiming a series of crusades. And the idea was to gain back the lands taken by the Muslims and to regain Jerusalem. Sadly, though, the Pope also said that if you signed up to go fight these wars, your salvation would be ensured. Okay. There are more than 4 crusades that happened. The first was called the Peasants' Crusade, followed by the well-known 4 crusades, which we'll talk about in chapter 12, and sadly a children's crusade that didn't work out so great. Okay, I have a video glossing over the crusades so you have an idea of their purpose and who fought in them. So go ahead and watch that email link. And then I also have the fall of Constantinople in 1453. So go ahead and watch those 2 YouTube videos and then come back to me. Needless to say, the Byzantine Empire had come to a sad, sad end. But it didn't come to an end before it had played a key role in preserving Christianity and the Western culture.
Welcome to the Dark Ages, the best part in history. Dun dun dun.
What are you guys doing in here?
We're talking about the Dark Ages?
Oh, for land's sakes, people. Okay, so the Dark Ages. Honestly, okay. Here we go. The Dark Ages are traditionally really the early part of the Middle Ages, from the fall of Rome, which is like 500 AD, all the way to 1000 AD. And the darkness isn't darkness. It is really just imagery referring to the lack of historical information during that time period. And that imagery idea, or the name, came from Petrarch in 1330 AD. I hate to ruin it for you. I know they used candles back then, and you look great. And capes. But let's find out what happened during part of the Dark Ages. And welcome to the intro to chapter 11. Okay, so the very first part of chapter 11 is really all about the formation and the foundation and the rise of Rome with its new church. Okay, so let's just kind of flounce on through what you've already read this week in the first part of chapter 11, which is, okay, first of all, the Christians started in Jerusalem. And when the apostles and the disciples started spreading the gospel and the good news throughout the Roman Empire, house churches would spring up. Now, these people all had they were like-minded and they had the same gospel. Even though they were independent and spread out, they were still one body under Christ, right? Okay. Then came the persecution. And after years and years and years and years and years of that, then Constantine the First came. And instead of having individual churches, he wanted to unite all the Christians together under one church. Okay, he wanted to make it a state church underneath him. And Theodosius the First's plan was to make it a state religion. All right, with all this massiveness going on, this one church grew, and it needed organization and leaders. So what was once the independent house churches had elders and deacons leading them. Those names changed into bishop, which is overseer in Greek. Okay. And instead of many hands make light work, with many deacons and elders caring for the congregation, most churches started just having one bishop or overseer lead them. Now, by 175 AD, Irenaeus declared that every church must be with the Church of Rome because he decided that it was supreme. Irenaeus and others like him had ideas on how to further develop the universal church. Okay, some of these ideas were, as you read, the apostolic succession, the apostolic authority, and the Petrine theory. As you read, those were the ideas that helped to sculpt the now Roman Catholic Church. All right, so now we got to have a language arts grammar lesson because everybody's excited about language arts and history class, but I am. Okay, so the word Catholic with the small lowercase c was actually comes from a Greek adjective, katholikos. This is what it looks like in Greek in English handwriting. Does that make sense? It just looks really super cool. But anyway, that word means universal, okay? And so I just thought I would point that out. So when they called it the Roman Catholic Church, it was the Roman Universal, everybody under one church. That's where this comes from. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out because it was cool. So anyway, with the new Roman Catholic Church, this being the capital church in Rome, it became the head of all the others. And the Bishop of Rome then came to be called the Pope, which is Latin for father. Now, in 445 AD, Western Roman Emperor Byzantine III officially recognized Leo I as Pope over the whole Roman Church. Now, if you want to take a second, and I'll show you a picture of what these guys look like. All right, so there were other popes that you read about and the doctrines that they installed and what they were known for, okay? And you might also remember me talking about Jerome in 405 translating the Greek Bible into the Vulgate Latin, right? Okay, and then that became the only translation really that the people had. Now, sadly enough, regular people could not read the Vulgate Latin, but the bishops could. So the only way they could hear God's word is through the bishops and their understanding of it. So that became kind of a problem, as you read in your reading this week. So later on in the 1100s, Peter Waldo of France, who was a wealthy merchant, had the Bible translated into the language of his people over there so that they could finally read the scriptures themselves. Not only Peter, but also during that time later on, John Wycliffe in the 1300s gave the English people the Bible in their own language as well. This was both accomplished by copying the versions by hand. Each Bible they wrote was painfully, lovingly done by hand because the printing press hadn't been invented yet.
All for one and two for tea. I brought the cat. We're not drinking tea with the cat. Oh. Stay tuned next week to hear Mom finish talking about chapter 11.